explain a little bit, what role does branding play for portfolio companies?
First off, I'll just explain that really quickly for those who don't know the way private equity works today is that you buy a company, you nurture that company for a longer time than before,
Yep.
and you make it better. You might acquire other companies, you might merge some companies together, and then you sell it over time.
Right.
But what we do is that we come in and we help increase the valuation of that company through branding, through
Yeah.
small adjustments that are needed, because often branding is an afterthought. Branding and messaging can be very, very helpful and actually can save you a lot of time and money
Yeah.
because it gets everybody on board.
Welcome to the Turbo Branding Show, where we help you ignite your growth by leveraging your brand to grow faster, easier, and more successfully. I'm your host, Sue Kirschner, and today I'm welcoming Marc Rust to the show. So let's jump in and turbocharge your brand. First of all, thank you so much for being here, Marc. I'm really excited to have another brand strategist on the call so we can geek out about all things branding.
Yeah, I am too. I'm super excited get into the weeds with you and have a great conversation.
Awesome. And I hope private equity partners are listening in today because Marc is going to share how he helps PE firms increase their portfolio's value and some stories we've got here. But let me tell listeners a little bit more about you, Marc, and why you are the perfect
Okay.
guest to talk about the magic and value of a great brand strategy. Marc Rust is a creative strategist, pattern breaker, and founder of Consequently Creative. Known for unlocking brand potential through bold ideas and transformative storytelling, Marc helps organizations articulate their essence and stand out with clarity and emotional resonance. A TEDx speaker fluent in French, he blends global perspective with poetic sensibility to reframe identity and spark connection. That is a cool sentence right there. But from private equity portfolios to purpose-driven startups, Marc guides teams towards deeper narratives and strategic lift, always with taste, intuition, and a touch of mischief. I like your bio, Marc. It's so intriguing.
Well, it's got to be interesting. You got to be edgy and snarky, or else
Yeah,
people don't.
exactly. Here, I have a weird question for you. Did you actually write that, or did you have other people help you write that? Because I talk constantly about even branding people, we need other perspectives to help write about ourselves, right?
Yeah, I think it's quite impossible to write your own bio, and you shouldn't because it's difficult to talk about yourself, and it just feels weird to be like, "Oh, I'm so amazing. I'm this, I'm that." So it was like a combination of things. I have a file, just called Mark Rust Bio on my computer, and it's just about changing it every now and then, putting some words that are unusual. What I'm looking for is I'm just trying to make it not boring and not
Yeah,
like every bio,
right.
people want to hear some fun things about you. Also, in the field that we're in, you can't use the word awesome anymore because that's just overused, right? So it's a
Overused.
combination of things and maybe a little bit of AI in there and then
Right.
modifying it and making it cool.
I like it. Yeah. I'm trying to bring back cool, but my kids tell me that's a lost cause. So instead of awesome. But anyway, when we talked last, we had a fun conversation how each of us became interested in branding. And I was wondering if you could share that story again. What drew you to brand strategy, design, and everything branding?
Well, I mean, I don't know what I told you last exactly, but what really brought me into branding is that when I was a kid at age 9, I moved from the United States to Paris, France, and my mother's 100% French, and I landed in a country that I did not know. I didn't speak the language, and it was just culture shock from every direction.
Yeah.
Of course, I was in bilingual schools and I was learning French, but it was really, really difficult and I was totally
Yeah.
lost. But one thing that I absolutely adored was the commercials on TV. And, I would play in my room and my mother would call me to the TV room when commercials would come on. I
Yeah.
know the rest of the world does the opposite. Commercials, they go to the kitchen and do something else as a break. But for me, I was drawn in by the commercials because commercials are magic and they deliver, a jingle, music, a great message, great action, etc. And you can really understand it no matter the language.
Yeah.
And I think that that's how I really learned French was through advertising and just piecing things together. it made me fall in love with the magic that is, you know, good marketing. That
Yeah,
combination of the perfect message and the perfect imagery.
right.
You notice something, you turn around and you're like, oh my gosh, that is really strong. That's unusual. So yeah, that combined with the fact that, in France and in Europe in general, posters play a big part in culture. Like I'm
Very.
thinking about like the posters that wrap around the subway walls were just these huge things where you have so many seconds to grab somebody's attention and
Right.
get to engage or remember. So it kind of nurtured me to really fall in love with what marketing means and how you craft a message.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, what I loved about that story is obviously your passion, but it's a similarity between you and I because at the age of
Yeah.
10, I moved as well. So I moved to Puerto Rico and then to Mexico. And so my love of branding started not when we moved, but when we came back. Because when I came back after being abroad for over 7 years, I stood out like a sore thumb. I came back to the United States for my senior year of high school, which is not the time to come and join a brand new school, is the last year. And I stood out like a sore thumb and having kids, when I said, oh, I was in Mexico, and they're like, oh, you mean New Mexico? Just blew their minds that there was something, outside of the US and everything. But I stood out like a sore thumb. And at first I was resentful that, oh my gosh, why are you treating me like I'm so incredibly different than all of
Yeah.
you? But then afterwards I came to embrace it. And I embraced this idea of, you know what? I actually love being different and I love
Yes.
standing out. And it started this whole idea about, well, how do you differentiate yourself? And how do you do it in a way, though, that, because I'm still a teenager, how do you do it in a way that still makes you relevant or makes other people like you or, things like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
that was one kind of experience was falling in love with how do you differentiate in a way that's meaningful. The other thing that I think sparked me towards loving branding is when I was in getting my master's degree and I was in an entrepreneurial class. And it was when I was thinking about going out on my first entrepreneurial venture, and I was going to start this agency for helping companies in the US take their
Hmm.
products to Latin America. And I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. I had this whole business plan, I had this whole spiel, and we presented in the class to investors who were big shots here in the Chicago area,
Cool.
presented to investors, and I was all excited, and people are gonna love this. And they all said no. No, I don't think that's an interesting business idea. I don't think you're ready to run
Right.
it. I don't think, and it shocked me. And after going home and crying for like 3 days straight, I realized that, oh my gosh, I didn't tell the story effectively. I didn't tell it in the way they wanted to hear it, which is as investors, they wanted to hear, how are you going to make money? How are you going to make us money if we
Yeah.
help you and invest? And it just drove home this whole idea about, oh my gosh, if you want to convince someone of something, the message, the way you present it, all of that rolled together into storytelling basically is so outrageously important. And that's when I just absolutely fell in love with branding and the concept of sharing
Yeah.
ideas and moving people with your ideas. So,
Absolutely. I mean, isn't it interesting that, when it's sometimes just really small adjustments that are necessary in order to make a message better.
yeah,
And so many people just feel like, oh, okay, I've done this. This is who I am. This is how I describe myself. Here's my pitch. And they're missing the mark on something that is really not that difficult to change,
yeah,
you
right,
know?
right, absolutely.
And
So,
then also about, one thing that you were saying about, this having a different culture and coming to another country and stuff like that. I've always tried to use that to my advantage because, I mean, we're very similar being in the creative field and having to
mhm,
come up with ideas and stuff like that. It's quite easy for you and I to switch gears in our mind and say, hey, let me look at this from a non-American way.
right,
Or, and it's very helpful. And people turn around and go, oh my gosh, what a great idea. You have so many good ideas. It's not that we have so many good ideas, it's that we've experienced a different culture. And
absolutely.
it allows us to look at things through that different lens. And yeah, to other people, it seems like, oh, wow, I couldn't think that way. That's really different.
Right. Right. No, 100% agree with you. It does. Traveling overseas, living overseas, experience another culture, it opens your mind to the fact that, like you said, there's so many different perceptions around what you're trying to communicate that you need to be cognizant of that. And being able to need to put myself in somebody else's shoes.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's a gift in the creative world, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit more about, you talk on your website about reframing a brand story, and here we're talking about reframing the brand story to be more customer focused or audience focused.
Yeah.
Can you maybe share a moment when you thought or saw that happen, or when you helped a client exceed what their goals were by just reframing the brand story?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the when you're looking at a brand, and I'm reframing a brand, or somebody hired us for a redesign or something like that, you're not trying to change the identity of a brand. You're not trying to
Mhm.
change who they fundamentally are.
Right.
What you're trying to do is uncover who they are. Go back to the roots, go back to why they believe in this, what gets
Right.
them excited about this, or what got them excited about this, years ago when they started the company. Because in a lot of situations, people kind of lose vision
Yes.
on what they stand for, why they started this, and how they started this. Because, the way you start a business is by getting an audience, right?
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
you have to have a customer. So once you get those customers and you have this snowball effect of, okay, more things are going on and I'm able to sell more and get more clients. All right, that passion comes from something. You are able to resonate with that audience. And then
Yes.
over time, things change, businesses grow, blah, blah, blah. And you might lose sight of that. And that's okay. But there is also a need to kind of readjust and come back to what makes your brand remarkable, right? And the way we get there is that we get our hands dirty, we get in and we talk about their values. We understand what they stand for. We also talk to their audience and understand what their audience are looking for. And then we craft, that strategy. Strategy is not just a fancy word that sounds cool. Well, it does sound cool,
It,
but strategy is definitely creating the link between your audience needs and your business objectives. And I
yes.
think that needs to be revised every now and then and refreshed, where you can go in and say, hey, maybe our audience needs have changed. How do we match that up with our business objectives, and what is the strategy, right?
Right. Right.
And I think these days, strategy is taking a really weird path. And it often happens when there's new technology. Like everybody is thinking AI right now. Oh,
Right.
I should add AI to my business.
Hmm.
That's great, but that's not strategy.
Right.
That's adding on a new technology because it's a shiny new object, right?
Right.
If you can use AI in the sense that it makes sense to our audience to use AI, then yes, that's a great strategy because
Yeah.
that will link up to your business objectives. But just using it for the sake of using it doesn't make sense. And we've seen this in the past. I mean, I remember when, Google Ads came out, okay? And everybody's like, oh my gosh, Google Ad Networks, it's the best ad network. It's really awesome. People are just doing ads for any reason. And I even had a big investment client they were running a Google ad. I can say who it was. It was John Hancock
Yeah.
Insurance. They were running Google Ads to a landing page where you couldn't sign up and there was no call to action on the landing page. So
Okay.
that's horrible strategy, right? It's just using the technology because it was new and everybody was saying, yes, you should be on Google ad campaign. And they were using it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so anyway, just really making that link, making sure that your strategy is in tune and working.
Yeah. And I like what you said about that because, again, that's the best part of what I love about what I do. It's going back to, like you said, businesses grow, they start to scale, they go in different directions, they hire new people, things
Hmm.
are changing. But every now and then you need to reset. And like you said, you need to go back to the core, to the DNA, the core values, the why
Yeah.
did you start your business, and things like that. And I love doing that because when I work with a client, especially because the ones I work with are just kind of starting to scale. They're getting that. So the founder usually is still involved and things like that. And when I go in and I do my deep dive on what's your brand? What do you stand for? How are you different in the marketplace? One of the key components is talking to, like you said, stakeholders, talking to their customers, talking to their employees, and saying, what do you think this company does really well on its best day? What does it stand for? How would you refer it? And let me tell you, when I present that to the founder and the executive team, I've had executives cry because
Oh, absolutely.
it makes them fall in love with their business again, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, I put out fires every day. I'm dealing with all these problems, but you brought me this gift of being able to remember why we started this business and what we're passionate about bringing to the marketplace. So
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
love that.
And it's also quite important to give a definition to why it's remarkable, right?
Yeah.
And when you were talking, one thing came to mind. Years ago, I helped this company called Wire Belt,
Okay.
and these guys do conveyor belts
Yeah.
made out of wire. Okay,
Yeah.
it's a conveyor, like if you need potato chips, it can go in oil and pop back out, and it's on the potato chips are on a conveyor belt.
Yeah.
And these guys are, we're asking them all these questions and what they stand for. And, come on, it's conveyor belts for a potato factory or chicken McNuggets or something like that, right? How interesting can that be? And, as we're going into it and we're understanding how they use it and all this stuff and all this service and all this and why quality matters, it came down to when I was doing the presentation of what they stand for.
Yeah.
I started off by saying, hey, when your conveyor belt doesn't work or breaks or there's a snag in it, business stops.
Yeah.
And let's say you're doing potato chips, potatoes are still getting delivered, but chips aren't going out the door, right?
Right.
So what does this mean? It means that it's the blood of your company. It is the circuit that your company works on, you know?
Right.
So it's not something to take lightly. And so when what does this mean for the wire belt reps or the people selling? Well, they're selling on a much higher level now. They're not saying, "Oh
Oh,
yeah, we have conveyor belts." No, no. We are selling the blood that goes through your company. We are selling the energy that allows you to deliver products on time.
yeah.
So it's a really different
It's
story and it's remarkable. It's
It's
fun.
it is remarkable. It's avoiding an operation downturn where you're
Yeah.
actually losing money. It's the
Yeah.
story is I help keep you profitable, right?
Exactly. And so I think that's our challenge is to find that little nugget of information that people can start rallying around, that they can
Yep,
start identifying with, and just celebrating who they are, what they stand for.
right. Absolutely.
No matter the industry, by the
Yeah, no
way.
matter the industry, there's
It doesn't
always
have to be Nike.
exactly. I've had clients come in, it's like, oh, I don't have a brand. We're not different. We don't do anything. It's like, no, there's always something. You just have to frame it correctly, right? And you have to figure out what really matters. What is the value that you provide to your customers? So, all right. Let me ask a little bit about, I made a promise earlier, we're going to talk about private equity. So I know
Okay.
with your firm, you focus a lot on helping private equity firms, brand their portfolio and get, additional value out of their deals. So can you explain a little bit, what role does branding play for portfolio companies? And maybe
Mhm.
share an example of one that you've done recently that you thought was really interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, first off, private equity, I'll just explain that really quickly for those who don't know, are obviously companies that they're in the business of buying companies,
Hmm.
nurturing those companies, and then finding a suitable buyer for that company, so selling the company.
Right,
They need to do that in order to, make money, give money back to their shareholders, what have you.
right.
The old school view of what private equity is that, okay, I buy a company, I trim the fat, and I sell it,
Yep,
right? That has really changed a lot. That's not the way private equity works anymore. The way equity works today is that you buy a company, you nurture that company for a longer time than before,
yep,
and you make it better. You might acquire other companies, you might merge some companies together, and then you sell it over time.
right.
And but what we do is that we come in and we help increase the valuation of that company through branding, through
Yeah,
small adjustments that are needed, because often branding is an afterthought. Or, they might think, oh, branding's easy.
Right. Yeah,
If
we got
you're a
it.
private equity person and I say, hey, I own a branding company, the initial reaction is, oh, yeah, you play with colors and logos. That's great.
Yeah,
But no, it's far more than that because it's, as we just talked about before, it's about the message, it's about, the brand story, etc. So there is a small window of opportunity after a company has been acquired, and we like to refer to this as acquisition turbulence.
I like that. Yeah.
Let's say you're part of a company, right? And you just got acquired by a big private equity firm. You think, oh my gosh, what should I do? Should I
Yeah.
dust my resume? Should I start looking for another job? What's going to happen to me? What if,
Right.
what if we get merged with another company and my job becomes redundant? What's
Right.
happening? Oh my gosh, right? So that kind of turbulence, and I love using the word turbulence because very much like when you're on a plane,
Yeah.
and for some people, you might be listening to music, watching a movie, reading a book. When there's turbulence, you stop everything, and your
Yeah.
mind goes to, "Oh my gosh, I hope this plane doesn't go down." Right?
Right.
Same thing within a company. Oh my gosh, I hope that things are going to be good for me. Things are
Right.
going to be the same.
Right.
So we come in and we help with what the company stands for, why they are a remarkable company, and what is worth celebrating.
Hmm.
And what their values are. How do you attract the right employees? How do you retain that top talent that, as a private equity firm, made you want to buy this particular portfolio
Right.
company? And then how do you nurture that over time to actually be in line with your institutional goals? Meaning, anytime you buy a company, it's going to be a turnaround, a stay the course, or a readjustment, right?
Right.
It's one of
Right.
those things.
Yep.
Branding and messaging can be very, very helpful and actually can save you a lot of time and money
Yeah.
because it gets everybody on board.
And it
And
actually adds not only save you time and money, but it adds value. So when you go to sell this portfolio or this company at the end of the day, at the end of the term,
yeah,
you can get a higher multiple potentially if you can prove that we have brand loyalty, we have, customer loyalty, and yeah, it
yeah. I
definitely.
mean, to use a cliche, you judge a book by its cover. Okay.
Yep.
So let's focus on that cover and make it really, really good. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. And, the best part is that it honestly pays for itself and some,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
you
I
know?
had one of my favorite projects that I have ever done was with a private equity firm. And, I loved building on what you were talking about. It was this company, it was called London International, and it was private equity, and they were going to try and consolidate and roll up a bunch of different small mom and pop organizations in the auto detailing business. So if you wanted to add accessories to your car, to your truck, trick out your
Mhm.
car, things like that. They bought up a number seven companies to roll up under this London International. And it was twofold. It was a twofold project, which is fascinating. The first was like you were talking about, they wanted to create a culture, a brand around the umbrella company, London
Yeah.
International, kind of getting all of the employees and everybody to talk about the same core values, the same culture, the same characteristics and things like that. And that was very exciting to present to the leaders of these companies that were being, pulled together and put onto an executive team and give them the right talking points and how do you nurture and make sure that your employees stay so that we get maximum value out of this roll up. But the other thing we did was because these were consumer products, we had to really study the brand architecture and say, okay, you purchase these seven companies, but
Hmm.
which one of these actually has equity in the
Yeah,
marketplace?
yeah, yeah.
Which names, which brand names are recognized and which aren't? And we were able to come back and work with them to take the seven names and roll them into two. So it saved them time, saved them money. It created a better brand presence in the marketplace and it created value so that when they sold the company, I think it was 6 years later, all the investors were thrilled with how they were able to nurture and build value and build brand strength and equity and have a successful outcome. So,
And I think that, when you do define a company and help a company grow from a marketing standpoint, and turning it into having remarkable stories,
yeah,
the company really thrives in ways that are unexpected in the sense that you might have this junior person within the company who actually has great ideas and really cares about the company, you're
Hmm.
now giving that person a voice and something that they can relate to.
Yes.
And as far as relating to, the audience of people looking for jobs has changed, right? The
Oh,
way
yeah.
that looks at a job versus millennials and Gen Z is drastically different.
Yep.
To that, if your company doesn't have values and talks about why you care about things, then you're totally missing out.
Yes.
Because those are things that weren't so important to Gen X, but they're extremely important to millennials,
Yes.
Gen Z. That's what we all want. We want those remarkable stories. We want those values that people can identify with and say, you know what, this is me, and this is not me, right?
Right. Exactly. I want to work here because I believe in what you're trying to do to make the world a better place, even if making the
Yeah,
world a better place
absolutely.
is just serving a couple of customers right here. So, yeah. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. So, okay, because, we're both brand strategists and love talking about branding, let's do some questions where we just talk about branding, right?
Okay.
So what's one brand myth that you love to break?
It's that with technology and, the influence of the web and where your brand lives and all that stuff. And we know that, okay, the epicenter of any brand is your website. That's where people go usually to find out what you
Yeah.
stand for, who you are. So your website should be good. But I think one of the myths is this focus on the experience, the
Hmm.
brand experience. So people look at data, they look at analytics, they make sure that it works on all platforms and all that stuff. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying that that shouldn't be the only primary focus. And
Right.
that is the myth. People believe, oh my gosh, it's all about the experience.
Okay.
I think it's about the relationship. And people very often fail to realize that it's a human relating to another human. Even if it's B2B or B2C,
Yeah.
it's me relating to you, right?
Right.
So, what is the relationship? Because relationships don't come about just because of a good experience, right? I get good experiences in a lot of different places, right?
Right.
But the relationship is different. And
Yes.
to me, that's building a brand. So you build a relationship through consistency, through value, which translates to trust down the road, and that's
Yes.
price.
Yes.
And that nurturing aspect of a relationship is so important. And it's actually quite interesting because it's easy. Instead
Yep.
of just focusing on the experience, start thinking about your customers as, oh, it's a relationship that I'm trying to build. What am I going to do so you have a great experience? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
but you're going to remember me. You're going to
Yeah.
want to engage with me again, etc. So
Yeah.
yeah, so going from experiences to relationships is so
Okay.
important.
I like that. I like that focus on the relationships. Now, I will push back a little bit and say that one of the myths I would like to counter out there
Yeah.
is when people say, "Oh, branding is all just about messaging. Write me some messages," right? And what
Hmm.
I found a lot of times and what I work with my clients is we do look at the experience because every touch point that you have with a customer is a chance to make or break your brand, right?
Hmm.
You're either strengthening what you've said or you're detracting from what you've said and creating that.
Yeah.
So when I work with a customer, we do look at the experience to say, does it validate or does it live up to the promise that you're making in your messaging? Because if there's a disconnect, you can't create that relationship that you need to make. So I believe I'm absolutely 100% with you in that the experience is not the goal. The goal
Yeah.
is the relationship, but the experience they have with your company is something that builds that relationship.
Yes. Oh, these things are absolutely intertwined for
Yeah.
sure. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So no, but I like that. And then the other myth that I like to break is that branding is only for big companies with big pockets of money, right? And for me, that's my passion is that no, I think the brand is actually even more important and essential for smaller companies who are starting to scale and grow because as we talked about at the beginning of this show, you need that focal point of where you're going and what you stand for so that you don't distract and go after shiny objects and suddenly your business doesn't stand for anything. It's not pleasing enough people to grow and things like that. So I absolutely believe that if you don't spend money on figuring out what the heck is our brand and how do we communicate it to employees, to customers, as well as to even investors, that you're not going
Hmm.
to scale, you're not going to grow, you're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And it's funny what you said about, the myth that branding is for big companies only and stuff. You know, a lot of designers, might come out of school and be like, "Oh my gosh, I want to work for Nike. I want to work for these big brands. I want to work for Apple. What, oh my gosh, it's the world's best brand, right?"
Yeah,
It's actually at those companies where there's not a lot of wiggle room for
right.
creativity because the
Exactly.
brand is already set and it's a very, very strong brand. What's difficult and takes talent is actually taking that company that doesn't have a strong brand or doesn't have a strong message and giving that company a voice.
Yes.
That's where you should exercise your muscles and have
Yes.
that, bring something amazing.
I
And
agree.
it's
I agree. All right, I'm going to ask you another question because I think it's going to be another fun discussion for you and I, but it's last time we were talking, we talked a little bit about magic. What is brand magic? And I wanted to kind of ask you, how do you define that? And maybe you could kind of say, what's a brand that you think has just nailed that magic, either as a brand entirely or even just maybe one of their ads or something like that?
Sure. So yeah, magic is first off, to me, is the combination of elements, right? If
Yeah.
you take a logo on its own or a color palette on its own or imagery on its own or messaging on it, it doesn't mean much on its own, right? It's when you
Right.
combine those things and you come up with ingenious ideas, right?
Yeah.
So, and back to what I was saying in the beginning, a great poster is the one that has that great image, great photography combined with a fantastic headline. That's magic. It's magic because I'm seeing something that I did not see before, and I'm like fascinated by it, right?
Yeah.
And of course, there's other things around brands that make magic happen. I mean, when I think about when I was a kid, seeing the Goodyear blimp.
Mm.
It's fascinating. And I remember, we'd be driving down the highway and my father would point it out and say, "Oh, there's the Goodyear blimp." And I would see it and I'd be like, amazed. I mean, the Goodyear blimp, it was so cool. Where you could
Right.
be somewhere else and you'd spot it. You'd be the first one to spot it. Oh my gosh, there's the Goodyear blimp.
Yep.
That was magic because to me, it was awesome presence. It was something really cool. You didn't see it very often. It was a gift, right? A gift to a child, to an adult, whatever, and years down the road, I found out that it's tires. It's Goodyear tires. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. I get it. It's a tire company.
Yeah.
That's cool. But I had a very exciting experience around Goodyear and that brand, even though I wasn't purchasing tires from them as a
Right.
child.
Right.
But, later down the road, a few years ago, I was in a shoe store and I turned over a pair of shoes and the sole was Goodyear rubber and it said Goodyear. And
Huh.
instantly I was thinking, quality. This is great. I
Right.
get makes sense to me, right?
Right.
And that's magic. That's cool. They preserved something special and
Right.
they celebrated their brand and positioned their brand in a very, very special way.
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. I like that. I like the example of Goodyear. It's kind of like when you see the Oscar Mayer Wiener mobile going down the highway, and immediately it was like, "Ah, look, it's that kind of a thing." So,
Yeah. And it takes ingenuity and it takes really it takes different people getting together into a room
yeah.
and strategizing and brainstorming and talking. And, granted, I know AI is doing some fantastic things these days, right?
Right.
I've heard I don't know if you've heard in music, there's some AI bands out there that are just awesome, right?
Okay.
But the ingenuity that it takes to do the Budweiser, "What's up," commercials, those were great. It took the
Yeah.
world by storm, right?
Right.
Um, or I think I was telling you the last time we talked, I saw this really cool Kit Kat ad where it's just a photo of people in the street and everybody's looking at a Kit Kat bar like it was a cell phone. And
Yeah.
they're holding a Kit Kat bar, they're doing this with it, whatever, and you instantly recognize that it's Kit Kat. You get the scene.
Yep.
There was no headline, but that's magic. That's amazing. And it's combining elements in a way that you weren't thinking about before. And it's
Right.
inviting you to think about a brand in a different way. And
Right.
by the way, to never forget it.
Yep.
No?
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I love what you said about that, and I love the examples that you shared. And for me, brand magic is when you can create a deep emotional connection with your audience.
Hmm.
And it's, it doesn't, it's called magic because sometimes it's not rational where you get that connection. And it doesn't happen that often, but you're right. It's this combination of things that come together that I think touches on your sense of identity, or it touches on a shared value, a memory, a positive emotion. If you can nail that, and you're right, AI cannot go into most people's heads and figure out what that emotional connection or trigger might be, but if you can do that, it's exciting. And that's where the magic happens in that you create that connection, right? So
Absolutely.
I was thinking of like, oh gosh, what's an ad that did that for me? When's the last time I felt like, oh my gosh, I saw it once and I'm going to remember this forever, right? And I went back to I don't know if you remember the Volkswagen Darth Vader ad.
Oh
If
yeah, yeah.
if you remember that.
What
So
was it? VW?
I think, yeah,
Yeah,
it was
yeah, yeah. You're
VW.
right. Okay, okay,
Right.
yeah.
And it was the dad, or it was the kid standing outside by the car, and he's got his Darth Vader costume on, and he goes like that, like he's using the Force
Hmm.
kind of a
Hmm.
thing. And suddenly the lights go off and things like that. And the kid's like, and he runs away. Well, the dad was standing in the kitchen watching his son pressing the remote, and that's what made it look like
Yeah,
the kid had done magic and used the
yeah.
Force. But I was sitting there, I'm like, why did I remember that? And I was like, okay, well, it touches on a fond memory, right? Because I remember going to see Star Wars with my dad. It was mind-blowing. The movie franchise was a part of the background of my
Yeah.
life as I was growing up, so it touched on that. The ad shows how a dad just wants to make a little magic for his son. And as a parent, I relate to that. It's aspirational. I want to
Hmm.
do the same thing for my kids. That's a value. And it was clever. I love clever. And this father-son dynamic, says this is a family car. We're targeting Gen X families with young kids with this car. And it just, to me, it stood out and helped me remember it. But the brand magic helps you stand out in crowded markets. And that really, it generates loyalty, which is what everybody
Absolutely.
wants, right? When
But the interesting thing with that, Sue, is that the executives and the engineers
yeah,
at Volkswagen should probably say, no, you shouldn't do an ad like that. You should do an ad that focuses on how fast the car goes, on the engineering of the car, the safety of the car, the different options, the colors, anything
right,
that talks about us, right?
right.
And they would say never, oh my gosh, it makes no sense to sell on something that is the car magic? No. Is the car what does the car really have to do with Star Wars? Probably nothing,
Nothing.
right?
Right, right.
But you're creating a memorable moment around it. And that's why, like, a few years ago when the Barbie movie came out,
Yeah,
the campaigns around Barbie, whether you like Barbie or not, whether the movie was good or not,
right.
has nothing to do with the fact that the campaigns that came out around Barbie were absolutely phenomenal and
Yes.
everybody was talking about it. And
Yes.
every brand, whoever could, jumped on it. I remember that I think Burger King did a pink burger.
Okay.
I mean, that's awesome, right? Because it's appealing to our nostalgia. It's going back into our childhood,
Yep.
and it's creating a connection that is already there, by the way.
Right.
The memory is already there, but it's making a connection with something that already exists.
Yes.
And it's actually quite easy to make deeper brand connections
Yes.
where you didn't see them before, you know?
Absolutely. No, and like when the Barbie movie came out, I mean, all these groups of women, including myself, I went with 8 other women to see
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
movie because it was an event. It was a shared camaraderie. It was a
Yeah.
shared, do you remember Barbie? Do you remember being a kid and everybody went together? And the same thing, like you said about Volkswagen, it wasn't about the car. what was genius was that what they did was they said, who is our target market? And
Yeah.
how do we create something that says, we get you? We absolutely understand who you are and what you value and what you want. And oh, by
Mhm.
the way, because we, nailed down so perfectly your
Yeah.
identity, you should buy our car. And
Yes, yes.
yeah, it was awesome. So, all right. Well, this has been so much fun. I love talking about branding and I love talking about branding with someone else who's equally as passionate about
Absolutely.
branding. But what I wanted to ask, what I'd like to do is at the end of every episode, I like to ask if you can help me honor a small or mid-sized business that you think is just doing an amazing job with their brand. And I just ask, is there one that you could give a shout out to?
There isn't one that comes to mind absolutely right away. I
Yeah.
mean, because I just like the brands that are trying to break the rules, do
Okay.
something with ingenuity.
Yep.
And it's those that, you might use guerrilla marketing, you might use a funny tagline. It's just those that are trying to go against the grain a little bit,
Yep.
and really stand up to their passion and
Yeah.
say, you know what? No, I'm not going to do things the conventional way. I'm going to do them in a little bit different way, and you're going to see that and remember that. And it
Yeah.
takes guts. It really does.
It
And
does.
it's scary. And most people will tell you, "Oh my gosh, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't try to stand out in
Right.
an unusual way. Play it safe." So anybody who doesn't want to play it safe,
Got it. Excellent. All right, good. Well, Mark, thank you so much for spending time with me today and sharing your adventures and thoughts on branding. I really appreciate it.
it's been a pleasure. Whenever you want. This is really, really great. Thank you, Sue.
Good, good. Well, after listening to this podcast, if private equity firms or any company wants to reach out to you for help with making their brand remarkable, how can they reach you?
Well, my company is Consequently Creative, so we have a website, of course.
Yep.
Beyond that, of course, I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram, and you can Google my name. It's Mark with a C, and
See.
then Rust, R-U-S-T, and I'm pretty much there. But yeah,
All right.
very easy to reach
Perfect.
out to.
Perfect. Well, thanks again. And thank all of you listeners for joining us for this episode of the Turbo Branding Show. I hope you've been inspired to ignite your growth by leveraging your brand. And if you enjoyed the show, I'd love it if you could help me build a strong brand following. So please share this episode and be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. Thank you so much for your time and stay tuned for our next episode.